What's happening? I hope that I can project my voice from way over here. I don't have a microphone yet, but I'll probably be getting one. Not that I want to have a big booming microphone. Or boom mic, that'd be cool. Or even a studio microphone, who knows? I just mean one of those little things where I can speak from far away and you can hear me. But because it's weird because they're neighbors and this is weird stuff we're talking about here, but hey, let's go for it anyway. I'll project my voice as much as comfortable. Um, so I wanted to talk about the idea that when it's no longer part of the doctrine. What do I mean by that? I mean, um, we use the doctrine sometimes. We sometimes I know that I have. Well, let's just put it this way. Recently, things have happened in my life where I realize that my parents are very disturbed and very traumatized people, and I've been trying. Still, I've had some confrontations with them recently where I wanted to speak to them about the things that are going on within the witnesses, within and all the doctrinal changes, right? And hoping that they'll see, well, things have changed, therefore it can't be the truth, or therefore, I think at the bottom of all this is, don't you hear me? I just want to be heard. Don't you have empathy for me? And that's a subject of another video I think I'll make, is that Jehovah's Witnesses are incapable of empathy. I don't think they, if they have any, it's severely stunted, but for the most part, it's literally incompatible with the religion, with the mindset, with the culture, and yes, their beliefs to some degree, absolutely. The beliefs themselves lend to a lack of empathy too. But anyway, but you know, the lack of empathy is kind of like the foundation and everything else that they believe or that comes from is springing forth from that. So anyway, yeah, the my family lacks empathy. I would just love for them to just say, you know what, I understand you. That makes sense. It makes sense that you left. I get it. I don't judge you anymore, or at least I don't believe Jehovah is going to judge you anymore, anything like that. You are totally free, and I totally accept you for who you are, for what you believe, and based on everything that you've told me, based on these what looks like obviously contradictory and confusing parts of our doctrine, I'm going to let it go, and I will. And there's no need for me to witness to you anymore because you're my son and I love you, something like that. That's kind of what I would love to hear. Um, and maybe to some degree I could get some of that, like where it's like, well, I respect you, I love you, but they don't really. I don't think that they really understand or really can see this other point of view. And I understand too that in communication, like I've read this book about healthy communication between couples, is that and I can understand the points of view of other people, and I can even maybe understand why they believe what they believe, and it can even speak it back to them, why what it is, and then I can say why I disagree. But I can have empathy for them. I can understand and respect what they believe, and I don't necessarily need to change their mind, and still respect them. But you know, but then it gets tricky because the more I judge, I tend to see what's behind people's views and belief systems and stuff like that, and why they believe what they believe. I think that's really important too. And so, yeah. So I think my back to my parents. I think speaking of why they believe what they believe, yeah, they're very traumatized people, and I think that's why they're ingrained in this belief, and they're not getting out. They don't want to get out. because the beliefs that they believe reinforce everything that they feel. You know, whether it's toxic shame, they have shame for, you know, they believe their lives, they're kind of worthless, you know, and only through doing this, through believing this, are they made somewhat whole again. I mean, they literally call it undeserved kindness, undeserved. So they don't even deserve kindness. So they're, to that degree, they're, you know, they have a lot of shame, deep shame that they don't even see, and you know, they don't want to see that. They don't want to see that that's a symptom of why they believe that, what they believe. So yeah, there's deep shame. What else is there? There's, you know, the just a lot. You know, a lot of. I'm not a psychologist, but I understand some of the concepts, and you know, I think they're, you know, from childhood. You know, to use a concept of inner child. You know, their inner children are running the show and very wounded in their lives. You know, so anyway, that's not the point of this video, but that's what's going on with them, and to the point, they're so in so much shame and so much pain that they'll normalize a lot of the crap that goes on with the Jehovah's Witnesses because they have to be stuck there. There's nothing else for them. It's literally life or death. Kind of like children have to obey what their parents say because it's life or death. And you know, at a certain age, obviously, you know, there's a certain obedience and loyalty, but it extends far beyond. You know, I think my mom is still unconsciously obedient to her mother, who died in 2017, but she's still on that wavelength, you could say, where she's just, I've got to, I can't displease my mother, and from an early age she was locked in to the Jehovah's Witnesses, and because that's what her mother was traumatized. She lost her husband in World War II. He came back with malaria, died shortly afterwards, and my mom lost her dad, her biological dad, when she was just 4 years old, and my grandma, I think, had started studying. I don't know if she was a witness before she married him, but the point is that she was devastated. She did not know how to grieve it properly, and you know, explain to her kids that we're going to be okay, that this was awful, but we're going to be okay. She probably just passed on that sadness, that disappointment, which is normal. I don't mean that it's not, but that real trauma that my grandma had, and going back to her childhood, this is just endless cycles, you know. But she inculcated in my mom this concept of Jehovah and how important Jehovah was, that from an early age, like, she just started to believe it and feel this love for Jehovah. I'm talking like 4 years old, you know, or 3 years old probably, because I think they started before my grandfather died. So she was probably like 3 years old. I think she told me that. You know, and she's just laying on the ground, in the grass, and just like, I know Jehovah exists, and oh, I just feel him and everything. You know, this is normal for children to feel and think like that, you know. And she was ingrained in this so much, to the point where you know, and then eventually she realized, well, there are certain things that she has to do to keep that love from Jehovah. You know, the continuous spigot of love. Sorry, that didn't sound good, but the continuous channel to Jehovah, you know, to keep receiving his love, she's got to keep doing some stuff, and it's you know, and to get her mom's love too. You know, that was she was ignored, and there was not much empathy there, and none, I'd say. My wife noticed that when she first met my grandma, like, wow, she's such a cold person. I never even saw it that way. But there is a certain, you know, we must soldier on no matter what, and let's not feel our feelings, and we know all about that from earlier generations. But there are a few people who were wise enough to realize and not break that mold, you know, and people in society, and so on. But anyway, that's another I think of Gabor Mate. I don't know if you know him. He's an addiction specialist, but he's a good example of someone in his 70s who realized the damage that he received and the damage that he did to his children, and then sought to undo a lot of it, and sought to do so much repair work, with his children, that he's just such a great, I think, model. I'm not saying he's perfect, but he's a great model for people of that age, and what a great example he is, I think, for for someone who just realized how much trauma they created, but because of what they received. It's not about blame, but he did so much, I think, for his adult children, to help them because he wanted to, and I think that's such a great relationship that that parents of that age can reestablish, and heal with their own adult children. So anyway, where was I going with that? So my parents were they're so ingrained that I've realized that it doesn't matter, they could, my uncle, who wasn't in the religion, said that, they could tell them to jump off a cliff, the organization could tell them, and they would do it, I don't know at what point, they do have their own, they're willing to bend the rules a little bit, I think, to suit them, but it's not about the doctrine. I just want to go back to that theme. I mean, when it for me, like, as a person who wants to relate to them, I've started to realize, I've learned some things recently that it's just hard for me to look past it, and I've awakened to so many things that they've done with me, just the lack of empathy that they have for me, and but more importantly, just it's I don't want to speak about exactly the different things that I've learned, but at that point it's like it doesn't matter what the doctrine is, like what our belief systems are, or the differences that we have. They have done or allowed to be done things that are just so unacceptable that I don't even need to prove anything to them. It's like I unconsciously felt like there was a moral, like they had the moral high ground on me still sometimes when I would talk to them on the phone, because that's how they have that aura of them, of we know best, we know everything. But wait a minute, don't you see how everything has changed and this and that, and no, they'll just argue it, they'll just minimize it, they'll do anything they can to not validate what you're saying. And that for me is crazy making. It's like, yes, I just want to be heard. I think that's where I was going with that, is like, ultimately I just want them to validate me. But now I realize they have done things and allowed things done that are so, they're not unspeakable, but they are for this moment in this video, but they're just so disgusting and I don't know about, yeah, no, it is, but yeah, despicable and morally unacceptable. I don't know what else to say. That now I don't care what, I can't, there's no sense in arguing with them anymore. I know what I know, and that's more than enough for me to say, like, I don't think I can really have any relationship with them. It just doesn't make any sense. If someone, I'm just, this is indirect, this is not, as an example, like if someone knows that there's child molestation going on in the congregation, and they are willing to turn a blind eye to it, I mean, what difference does what their doctrine teach? They might have a promise of paradise and all that, and all these wonderful things, or or lots of rules and maybe lots of doctrinal things that may appeal to people. But if they're doing, if you know of people who are doing that in the congregation, and then you know that you can't do anything about it, lest they kick you out and not speak to you, it's game over. What else is there? It doesn't become about I don't need to prove anything to them. I don't need to prove whether Jesus is God anymore. Who cares? That's how I feel. Who cares if Jesus is God, or if Jesus is God's son and was created and created all things through him, or I could go into those contradictions, what look like to me contradictions, or things that don't make sense, or blah blah blah. The Trinity's a mystery, so, or there should be an a God in that in John 1:1, even though most scholars don't. No scholars actually. Who cares when there are things that are going on that we just know in our gut and our heart that are criminal? Of course they are. I mean, they are by society standards, and they are by our standards, by my standards. There are things that happen that are just that I know I don't that it's incompatible with compassion. It's incompatible with divine order. At this point, it's not like God is using this pedophile, to kind of like maybe he would use someone in the Bible or something. It's just like, no, this is disgusting. I'm done. I'm done. I can't associate with these people because they're God help them. They're beyond my help, and they're no longer safe for me to be around. And I don't need their energy anymore in my life, because they probably are holding on to more secrets than I could ever imagine. More and more things get revealed the more I talk to other family members in my just about the past. I was very sheltered, and at one point I thought that was a good thing, and maybe it's one again, it's that Taoist maybe not. It was good, absolutely good, that I wasn't exposed to the unhealthiest of elders, but at the same time I was probably being sheltered from things that my parents and other family members knew were going on and chose not to do anything. And by do anything, I mean just leave. It's not, oh, well, we stay away from these people. It's like, no, this whole thing's rotten. I cannot be in the same room with this person, even if it's a big hall, assembly hall. It's like, they are not my brother anymore, or sister. None of, anyway. I guess there's a few good people in there. There's still a few good people, but I'd like to hear what people think about this, because I thought this recently. Do you think there are any healthy elders at all in the congregation? Like, any, like, that haven't left already? I mean, I think because when I think about all the elders that I've known, the more and more I hear about it, it's like I realize most of them either they knew about corruption that was happening and let it happen, didn't do anything about it. Their conscience, they protected the wrong people, they protected the offenders, and allowed the victims to be victims and to be exposed, or they allowed them to be in harm's way all the time. Or they were doing it themselves. They were the aggressors. They were the offenders. And the only ones who have a conscience and think it through and are like, I can't do this anymore, and leave. Those are the good ones, in my opinion. And the good elders out there have already left, or they're going to leave the more they know. And the more experience they have being elders, I suppose. I don't know. Feel free to leave a comment if you think there are any, and I guess that goes back to, if Jehovah's Witnesses had empathy, they wouldn't be Jehovah's Witnesses. I need to make a separate one about that. But this topic is, when it no longer becomes about the doctrine. And I hope I've made that point, that there's no sense in arguing with sick people. Not my circus, not my monkeys. I think that's a saying. I believe that. That's what I realize. I can't, and it gives me some comfort, I guess. You know, knowing that, and it's also like there's no point anymore. And I tried to tell these things to my family, and they were kind of minimizing it. Like recently, I told them about all the changes. Now I can go to college. Now I could have gone to college or whatever. I mentioned that the sisters can wear pants, and they jumped in. Sweat. I mean, not sweat. Sorry, it's late. It's been a long day. They jump in and they said dress pants. They wear dress pants. Like that makes a big difference, right? Like if they would have said, if the new light would have been that now that they can have blue jeans, let's say, my parents would probably jump in and say, yeah, but they can't wear short shorts, So we still have some standards here. We're still keeping it classy. But it was just that little minimization that they did of what I was trying to tell them. It's like they were trying to debate me on things instead of just hear me out, Listen to what I'm saying. Listen to the big picture of what I'm saying. But I realize that big picture is going to do jack squat, and I've tried it with them many times, and it's because that it's just it's the way they're wired. I think they would have to understand so much about psychology and so much about programming that for them to, and something would have to, I don't, there's no magic pill. And this kind of goes back to, there's this therapist named Patrick Teehan, and he's on YouTube, Teehan, Patrick Teehan. And, he talks about that, I think, for adult children of, either narcissist parents or unhealthy parents, is that, sometimes we think that there's just a magic pill, our magic code, I think he puts it. If there's just one thing that we could say to them that would unlock their soul, and they would just realize, oh, I see, I get you now, I understand you, son or daughter or family member. But that ain't happening, and I see a lot of videos too where it's like how to reprogram, how to convince your Jehovah's Witness, how to witness to a witness, and I think I don't know if that has ever worked. Maybe it has. But I just know that people who have been, I don't know, I just know that people in my case who have been in it for so long, and I can just kind of read their energy, so to speak. I don't mean to be new agey about this, but I can just based on their experiences, based on the things that they've said to me, based on the things the way they react and respond to the things I say to them, it's insanity for me to think that they're ever going to change. That would be, it's unwell of me to think that, and it's just like a sign that I'm kind of looking for the magic code for them to finally get it, and that's not happening. So I think that's the point. It's kind of like with narcissistic parents, I'd just recommend going and looking at Patrick Teehan stuff, but with narcissistic parents and that type of family member, you can't, you kind of have to realize that you have to be your own parent again. You have to. That's the only route. Is you can't get something that they are not capable of giving, and that's something that has taken me a few years to process and to realize. And because they want a relationship with me, but I've just realized that it's to the point where they have been and still are permissive of unacceptable things, and so that helps me realize too that I'm dealing with sick people, and I can't unprogram them especially by pointing out changes in their doctrine or how their doctrine is flawed from the beginning. It's not going to work because they are married to this because of their own pain, their own trauma, their own sickness. It's okay to say that. It's okay to believe that. Till next time. It can be, this can be very liberating though. It's sad. It reminds me of John Bradshaw. Here's another good resource. John Bradshaw is kind of like a codependency specialist, but he also talks about this concept of being your own inner parent. And I believe at the beginning of his work or his therapy with people, or I guess it's work with people, because it's kind of a group therapy, or it's just like learning things yourself, and learning to and putting it into practice. It's one thing that he stressed. One idea was that at the beginning of this journey, you say goodbye to your parents. And now with some families, you come back, you reunite with them. But there's some parents where you have to say goodbye for good, and maybe you can reunite with them in an energetic sort of way, like in spirit, quote unquote, where you can just send them love and wish them the best. But due to for your own safety, you don't want to be with them. You can't. It's not well to be with them. But there's that split, and it's like a decisive goodbye that you say to them, and it's a necessary part of healing. And so John Bradshaw, Patrick Teahan, there's so many others. That could be another video too, of resources that have helped me. And with that, I'm out. If you have tried 2, 3, 4 times to share doctrine, it ain't going anywhere. If you're with those people who will still talk to you about it, if it's that situation. And by the way, like if you're disfellowshipped and they are not and you're being shunned, and there's no contact. If there was contact, I'm sorry to say it, this is probably how it would be. It would be a very frustrating experience being with them, because they're always trying. They're never stopping. They're never stopping. As that funny movie goes. Sorry, I'm not in the mood for humor. You know me as humorous, but I am multifaceted. But seriously, that it is a frustrating relationship from my experience that requires a very high boundaries, and sometimes it's very limited. It's a limited relationship. So, in my opinion, a lot of people are probably not missing much. I mean, if they are shunning you to that level, they're at a point where they're so indoctrinated. I don't think that's the right word. It's not about a doctrine anymore. I'm sorry to say, yes, some may wake up and stop shunning their own kids. We'll see what the changes bring. It'll be interesting. But, I would prepare to be gaslit a lot when it comes to other things. Like if you want to talk to them about the pedophilia, about, the blood doctrine. That's another good one. It's hard for me to imagine that the Jehovah's Witnesses are going to be completely and fully accepting of their own children post-shunning. Assuming that that's going to soften to the point where you can actually hang out and have conversation, you can be their best friend again, or something like that. Anyway, I feel like I'm rambling. Thank you. No longer part of the doctrine. That's going to be the title. No, seriously. Thanks again. Till next time. Talk to you later. Bye.